Okay, hi everyone. And today we're meeting virtually to discuss our lesson on the agricultural revolution and prehistory. So last time we met, I assigned you guys a short video on YouTube to watch. And what that means for us today is that we are going to have our discussion of the video, and then I'm going to give you guys some questions. It's just short questions, pretty quick, pretty painless, 5 total. That relate back to the video, just to check to see that you understand everything that the video is saying, that everything that I am saying. When we're discussing prehistory, the thing to keep in mind is that history is the study of written record generally, but prehistory, you might be thinking, that doesn't have written record. It took place before people knew how to write. But here is why it is important, and also why the agricultural revolution is important, is because everything that happened then led to the development of civilizations where people did learn to write and where we get our primary sources from and our reading and civilization and everything that we know and love and think of today. Like everything that you would think that follows after, like Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, everything that comes after starts with prehistory and the agricultural revolution. In the video, they discuss how this happened and that people were nomadic before they started to settle down, mostly alongside water systems, because water was irrigation. They started to learn how to domesticate plants and animals, probably accidentally, they think. And there was a lot of discussion of those things there. Tea. But yeah, people started to settle in farming communities, and once they started settling down, raising animals, that you start getting more division of labor and more development of complex irrigation systems and settlements and religions, and that leads us into everything else that we know and love. Some interesting things alongside this, alongside the video, are that with the domestication of animals, like France, they were domesticating snails. That's, well, okay, I will say that is kind of gross. Snails are very slimy, but they are a good source of protein. Most bugs are a good source of protein. Which also dovetails nicely into the fact that when we're studying prehistory, we need to rely on other sources outside of our historical purview to really get a good grasp on what we're seeing and what we're taking in and what we're learning. And other subjects that are related, such as biology, archaeology, even the fossil record, all of those things would enhance our understanding of what went on during this time period before writing. And even when we do get writing, it is not like some of the earliest writing is cuneiform, but which was Mesopotamia. And our next lesson is probably going to be on like the early Mesopotamian cultures and societies, because that was where people settled near the Tigris and the Euphrates River, which is considered by many to be the cradle of the agricultural revolution. So I'm just going to run through the questions that we are doing really, really quickly. There's only 5 of them. Very short. Very sweet. Question 1. What forms of study can we use to study prehistory from the past and the written record? Question 2 is what are the two forms of study that are mostly used, most heavily relied upon? Question 3 is why did ancient people settle near water? Why did they settle near water? I kind of touched on this a little bit. How many years ago did the agricultural revolution take place? This is one of the only times I'm going to be asking you in these questions for a direct date and number. I know a lot of you are a little bit number averse, and numbers and dates are a big part of history, but while you are going to need to know them, there's only one question on here that is directly related to that. So don't just focus in on that. What I'm checking for is mostly that you understand the information that is being presented to you. Not some, I mean, the dates are important. Don't get me wrong, but it is most important that you understand, like, why ancient people settled near water. And for question 5, we have 3 advantages. What are 3 advantages to agriculture and 2 disadvantages to agriculture? So what would be some advantages and disadvantages? Question 6 is related to a historical figure. We're not going to really be talking about him much in this class because he is way, way outside of our purview of time periods. He's a scholar from like the late early 1900s. You might know him. I know him as Charles Darwin. Question 6 is, did Darwin believe that agriculture was a deliberate decision or a happy accident? Why or why not? Why or why not? So I'm going to give you some time to work on that. But while I go through this, we're going to go, while you guys are doing this, I'm going to continue to speak a little bit about the agricultural revolution. And yes. You know what? Let's just review the questions. That is probably the easiest thing to do right now for a lot of us, virtually. So question 1 was, what 2 forms of study can we use to study prehistory in lieu of the written record? There's 2 forms of study. Those 2 forms of study would be archaeology and paleobiology. So I kind of touched on this before a little bit. Question 2 asks us to define the forms of study. So archaeology, paleontology. Question 3 is, why did ancient people settle near water? Water is something that we all need to survive. Mostly ancient people settled near water because it was easy to get fish and stay stationary, and also animals need to stop for water, and you can easily hunt animals better that way. You can domesticate them easier because you have a water source. Irrigation, another thing that people started to develop around this time period. It wasn't so complex. You don't get that until a little bit later. But they did use that for their water systems. How many years ago? That was about 15,000 years ago, I believe. And one of the more interesting things, I think, we're going to skip down to question 6 here. Did Darwin believe that agriculture was deliberate or an accident? Why or why not? Darwin actually believed that it was domestication of plants and agriculture was accidental, and you could definitely see that this was probably an accident, especially when in regards to plant life and farming, because a lot of times, like with the development of bread and beer and fermentation, that was mostly accidents. People would leave grain out in the sun and it would just ferment, and you would get like things like beer and like yeast out of that. And then people would kind of selectively breed for different qualities found in both plants and animals. It was probably unintentional. They think it was probably unintentional at that point, because like all ancient peoples kind of knew was that they wanted their a specific quality, and that if they took these two types of plants together or these two animals together that would produce certain qualities, and they would just keep going with that, and you would get a completely new thing that would be predominantly that quality. That's more for your science classes though, so I'm not really going to get into that too much. But it is fascinating, and that is also why they say that biology plays a big role in this as well. We're starting to wind down with time a little bit. We're going to introduce a little bit of prehistory vocabulary before we go. It's just a few words. I'm going to ask you to define them with whatever time you have in class left. And if whatever you don't finish, you can complete for homework. I'll be back in tomorrow. You can check it. So our words are going to be domesticate, fertile soil, hunter-gatherer, history, fossil, artifact, hunter-gatherer, migrate, archaeologist, archaeology, and ice age. So some of these are related to each other, some of them aren't. Some of them are just phrases. But you need to know all of these because they will be important, and that is what we are going to springboard our lesson with tomorrow when we meet again. Again, I'm sorry that I couldn't be here in person to deliver this information for you, but I am very happy to have had the pleasure of recording this for you all. I hope that it was informative, and going forward, once we're done with the review for the vocab and these questions tomorrow, we finally get to dig into civilizations. So, woo. Bye everybody, I'll see you later.